Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If you're looking to get more sales, more customers, master your marketing, and ultimately take control of your retail or e-commerce business, then you're in the right place. I'm Selena Knight, a retail growth strategist and multi-award-winning store owner whose superpower is uncovering exactly what your business requires to move to the next level. I'll provide you with the strategies, the tools, and the insight you need to scale your store. All you need to do is take action. Ready to get started? Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Today, I've got Tom Moult, who is the co-founder and CEO of Buttr Marketing. Now, Thomas, welcome to the show. And can I start off by saying you guys run some seriously sexy ads, and that is how you caught my attention. I remember seeing your ads in my feed and just going, who's running these? Because they're really good. And that was how I started my little adventure to find out who Buttr were. And then once we had that conversation, we were so on the same page when it came to marketing for retail and e-commerce brands. We developed a very quick friendship in terms of business, just business guys. So welcome to the show, Thomas.
Thanks, Sal.
Do you prefer Thomas or Tom?
Thomas is what my mother calls me, but I can go by Tom.
We'll just go with Tom.
Yeah, we'll go with Tom. But I appreciate the intro. I appreciate the comment about the sexiness of our ads as well. We haven't had anyone that has called our ads sexy before, so that's like a huge compliment. People have said beautiful. I think they've used more toned down words, but I love the enthusiasm. And yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
And by sexy, I don't mean like overtly sexual. What I mean is you're looking at them going, these are smooth, like these are sexy ads. Like I like them. I would stop the scroll and I actually watched the ad. And if somebody's saying that they're watching the ad because it's great, content or the visuals are fantastic, that is what you want a marketing agency to do. And honestly, that is somehow I find some of the best people to work with, is because if you can make me, like I am so highly skeptical, if you can make me stop and actually do some research about who you are, then that's it. We need to be friends.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I'll be the first to say that marketing agencies, I think in Australia, across the board, you have the good, the bad, the hot, the cold. And I think they have a diverse wrap is probably a way to put it. And I think there's good ones and there's bad ones, like any industry. But I think, at the same time, obviously the market has changed a lot over the past couple of years. And I guess our approach to advertising, which we'll probably speak a little bit about today, but I guess our approach to advertising, we like to think that we've evolved in line with consumer expectations, what's working for brands, the changing market, changing times. Obviously, it is a tough time for e-com in general at the moment, probably the toughest it's been for a little while. But at the same time, when we first met up, we first spoke, I think, personally, I think it was a huge alignment between what you're doing and I guess what we're doing. And I think highly complementary as well. We're not e-com consultants. That's the first really, really important thing. We are advertising specialists. So thinking about how we can actually, as you said, get people to stop scrolling, get them watching, cut through, and actually get the person through to purchasing your product. That's really what we do. But at the same time, like obviously the e-com side of things, paid media side of things, they're codependent on one another. And understanding both, I think, is really, really important to getting good outcomes as well.
So have you always been creative?
No, I haven't. And that's the really interesting thing, right? So I have a very, very odd background. And when I tell people what my background is, they go, how are you doing what you're doing? How in hell are you here? But I was a lawyer. So my background, so my background was in law. I was a commercial lawyer and I worked in consumer markets. So I had a lot of subject matter crossover there. But my move into advertising, that was sort of could you call it like an early career choice, but a pretty quick career choice coming from where I came from. I basically worked with large direct consumer brands as a lawyer. I did a lot of their commercial work. I did a lot of their like advertising regulation, that sort of side of things. And what I sort of found as I was working in there was I was actually not very interested in the law at all. And I was very, very interested in the advertising, the creativity, and the way these brands sort of got their product in front of people as well, got eyes on the product. And I mean, it's a bit of a problem when your sole job is to work in the legal side of things, but you are talking to the client about all the other things that aren't really relevant to what you're doing. And basically from there, I have a business partner, Will. So Will has always worked in the e-com and the advertising space. He had that background. I had a very, very different sort of leg of experience in terms of being inside a lot of businesses, working with them, seeing the worst in businesses, and I guess also seeing the best and seeing what works. We brought very sort of different skill sets to the table in a lot of ways. And I guess from there, we started the business, just the two of us. And then from there, we've grown vertically, scaled quite quickly. And for what is quite a young agency and quite a modern agency structure as well. So we sort of made pretty good inroads, I'd say, over the past 2 to 3 years or so.
Okay, so how do you know Will?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one as well, because Will wasn't actually, I didn't actually meet Will directly. So I met Will through my partner and he met me through his partner. So they worked together. They're our partners. They worked in retail together. This is very, very early days. We met through them. We had very similar sort of, I guess, work directions in a lot of ways, but we actually became really, really good friends to begin with. And then from there, we went off, it got to a point, I guess, around the beginning of COVID, maybe a bit prior to that. I sort of said, this is a direction that I want to go in. It's something I'm very, very interested in. He said, this is a direction, obviously, that I am in already, but at the same time, I think we can sort of come together and bring different skill sets to the table. We started the agency from there. And then we sort of started it as well with the goal in mind to not be like, and I know everyone says this, but to not be like other agencies in the market. I think digital agencies in Australia in particular, over the past maybe 5 to 10 years, have become very, very complacent. It's a smaller market. What you get in a smaller market generally is like a few larger players that sort of work through all the brands in the market or all the businesses in the market. And because advertising was so easy for so long, I mean, you could slap a Facebook ad up, you could get a 10 times return on ad spend.
Yeah, through COVID, if you weren't running ads, you were silly because money was just flowing your way.
Exactly. And I think like what that did is it was almost like this has become too easy in a lot of ways. And then what's happened over time is the market's become more saturated. It has become busier, it's become noisier. Obviously, platforms have evolved very quickly. The way people consume content has changed really, really extensively. And then it became harder. And a lot of businesses were very much digital focused. And I guess that's where for us, we sort of saw a large opening in the sense that the e-commerce, the digital market, I should say, was evolving to become more visual and more creative focused with the rise of platforms like TikTok, Instagram trying to keep up through video content. Obviously, YouTube evolving its platform. People generally these days, if they're sitting down and they're scrolling social media or a media platform, are consuming video. But the reality was that agencies weren't really evolving in line with that. They were still button pushing. They were still looking at the analytics. They weren't really thinking creatively about what was going on.
They were just media buyers, weren't they? That was all they were doing, is just buying the space rather than crafting the entire customer journey.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think that the point you make about the client, the consumer customer journey is so important because it's longer, it's more extensive. I mean, it's not linear anymore. People don't just see the Facebook ad. They don't just go straight to the website. They don't just buy. It's a flywheel. They're hitting a Facebook ad. They're going to a Google ad. They're going onto a piece of PR that's been written. They're then going onto TikTok. There's just all these sort of things, all these different touch points which are going on, and being able to cover them all is really, really important. So the visual aspect though, and the creative aspect though, is just something that agencies in the States, I actually think have evolved and got on top of much faster. But in Australia, you still have agencies that are working one day with an accounting firm and the next day they're working with a fashion brand. And it just makes complete zero sense to me.
Yeah. And I mean, people listening are all around the world. But I have to say, my agency is in America. Because exactly what you said, they're just more on the ball. Like, we have creatives being tested every single day. Like you said, I find that the Australian people, and this is very generic, we're just saying from our experience, there's a lot of complacency there. So when you find someone great, you stick to them. When you start working with an agency, it doesn't matter who it is, you're really taking a chance that this is going to work. I have a quick question for you before we get into that stuff is, who do you think that took the chance on who? Did you take the chance on Will, or did he take the chance on you?
I'm gonna be the nice guy here, and I'm gonna say that Will took the chance on me. I mean, I actually very transparently had understanding of business process. I didn't have a whole lot of understanding though of like technical advertising process when Will and I started. And I think that's the interesting thing is like a lot of that technical advertising process I sort of picked up and obviously evolved and developed over time through extensive reading and seeing it firsthand. But I think Will definitely had the better technical skills at the point at which we started working together. We brought different things to the table, but I do think I'm going to give Will the biscuit there. I think he put his money on me in that situation.
But it's working. I didn't realize you guys were so young in terms of as a business. You're talking just pre-COVID, which it's only like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to you guys, because what you have created has, it really aligns with everything that we say, everything we do, everything we teach, the retailers that we work with. So can we just maybe jump in and talk about that? I really want to talk to you about TikTok. You mentioned TikTok just before. I am old, clearly, and don't go onto the TikTok. TikTok, yeah. That was a joke, guys. I have claimed my name on TikTok, and I posted one video just to make sure that if I ever want to use it, it is there.
Yeah.
I want to get onto TikTok, but before we do, I have to ask you this, because it's something that comes up over and over again with like the retail and e-commerce store owners that we talk to, which is when you see a level of success, you can really struggle with this feeling as if you're an imposter. It's like, you look around, it's like, how did I get here?
Yep.
You came in to this situation with, let's be honest, no experience compared to Will. You've built a successful agency that does awesome, sexy ads. Do you ever feel like you're an imposter?
Yeah, I think everyone feels like they're an imposter at some point. I think it's only natural to feel that way. Because you don't know everything. I think that's the thing is you don't fundamentally know everything. And I think that's the thing is that with e-commerce, with any form of digital advertising, modern digital advertising, I think this applies to, a lot of the people who will be listening, brand owners in particular, the actual technical process in an ad account, they're becoming more simple because, you've got artificial intelligence, you've got things that are actually going and searching for your customers for you in a lot of ways. Media buyers are still very important, don't get me wrong, but and having a good media buyer will get you good results. But the actual processes in that ad account are becoming more simple. So being able to get across the technicals, it's being able to understand things, get up to speed with things, everything like that. But I actually think it's one of those areas, e-commerce is one of those areas where if you understand e-commerce, then I think you have a fundamental understanding of what the objectives are, what you need, being across your numbers, having clarity in certain aspects. If you understand those processes, it sets you up to understand advertising. It sets you up to understand growth marketing, because fundamentally growth marketing, yeah, sure, you need to think about the people call them tricks, but the strategies to actually get in front of people and cut through. But you can cut through, and you can do that in an unprofitable way. You can cut through and you can do that in a way that's going to diminish your brand. You can cut through and you can do all these things. And I think that's where, in my experience as an agency, we've actually brought the most value to our clients in a lot of ways, is being able to advertise in a way that's going to achieve their goals in a lot of ways, but at the same time do so with performance in mind, and being able to balance those two things so that we call it balancing brand and performance, or aesthetics and performance in a lot of ways, to be able to sort of get out of the advertising process what the client wants, and then also at the same time be able to bring in those performance aspects which are going to get the client what it needs, and that's actually sales. But I think for me, going back to your question, yeah, 100%. I still feel like it. Honestly, I still feel like an imposter a lot of the time, but I think my career, because I did see so many businesses, I saw the workings of really, really good businesses as well, big businesses, global businesses that were sort of even evolving or transitioning into e-com at that point in time. And I think what that gave me is just really, really good fundamental understanding of business objectives. And I think that's where the alignment for us, and I guess maybe our success as well as a business has come, is because we work towards what our clients' objectives are, what their numbers look like, all those sorts of things, and work within that, rather than saying, let's get a 1.5 times return on ad spend and let's spend $200,000 to get that, when it's just not going to be, commercially viable for the client to do it. So I mean, I think, 100%. I think everyone feels like an imposter. I mean, no one comes from e-com. That's the other thing. So I always say that e-commerce is still so young. So for me, it's most people who are going into e-com, they're going into it from a different area, either an old school practice, or they've got experience left the field, or whatever it might be. But, fundamentally speaking, there are very few people who come from e-com, even now in 2023. Obviously, that will change over time. But It's new. So we're all newbies in a
I'm
lot
going
of
to
ways.
say I've been around since 2007, so I feel like I'm an OG at this point.
You're an OG. When you're 2007 ecom, then you've got some years under your belt. That's
I
for
feel
sure.
like I know what I'm doing. When
Yeah.
my first website was built with Flash and I had to learn how to code. So yeah, I feel like I have some experience there. But you're right. And you said a couple of times there about learning. And I think if you are not constantly learning, it doesn't matter whether we're talking marketing, it doesn't matter if we're talking growth. If you aren't constantly learning, you will be left behind because everything is changing. What customers want is changing. Products are changing. AI. Oh my God. How much do I love AI? Like we actually have a team member called Sarah who is an AI person.
Yeah. I remember you showing me.
Changing the face of business and making it much quicker, much cheaper, much easier. So the other thing that you said quite a few times there, I think I clocked it 3 times already, is you mentioned retailers looking at their numbers. So can we just branch into that? Because I think one of the reasons, personally speaking, and feel free to correct me, one of the biggest reasons that I see agencies and your business owners where the disconnect is often because the retailer or the e-commerce store owner doesn't actually know what they want. All they want to do is abdicate all responsibility and say, I just need you to make me money. But if they're not coming to you, and this is why I'm so passionate about showing people how to work this out, is, if they don't know how long their customer sticks around for, how often they're buying, and it is really easy to kind of do a bit of a Homer Simpson and do the la, 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 la at this point, because you probably thinking, Sal, would you just shut up about that stuff? I don't really care. But do you care about making money? Do you care about wasting money? Do you care about making your customers happy? If you care about these things, continue listening. But if you don't, if you're not taking those things into account, and this is what you said earlier on about media buyer versus kind of that end-to-end agency, which is where you fit in. If you're not looking at how often people are buying, what are they buying together? What's their average order value? Are you doing upsells? Are you doing post-purchase? Are you doing email marketing? All those bits and pieces together, then you can put a generic, this is what your return on ad spend should be. But if you don't know those numbers, you are really just pulling numbers out of your butt. Like you just hope, crossing your fingers and running on the hamster wheel of hope and hoping that these numbers that you're giving your agency, if you're giving them any, are correct. And even if they hit those numbers, will you make any money?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I think that e-commerce, obviously once you've got product market fit, you've got a product that works, you develop that product or a range of different products, and you know what you are as a business. Like in a lot of ways, e-commerce can be, some people shoot me for saying this, but it can be reduced to a numbers game because, I mean, you're selling product and you need to be able to sell that product at margin, and you need to be able to sell that product in a way that's going to keep your cash flow healthy. If you don't have cash flow, especially in this current climate, raising capital is pretty much bordering on impossible. Like you don't have good cash flow management, then as a business, you're not going to end up in a great position. And I think it's probably a bit serendipitous because we're talking a couple of days out from Black Friday, although most Black Friday sales have already gone live for a lot of brands. Starting earlier and earlier.
What was just quickly as an aside? What was the earliest that you saw something? I'm going with 23rd of October. I got my first Black Friday.
Late October. Yeah, it would have been the last week of October. I was baffled. But I mean, I've been seeing some of and this is a different conversation, but some of the tactics this year, shutting down websites, really taking
we teach that.
Yeah, it's good though. I mean, it's aggressive. And that's the thing is if you're going to do it, you got to do it well. So I mean, that's a separate conversation.
Different conversation.
Yeah.
But if you're in our programs, we teach you how to do that stuff really well.
Exactly. And that's the thing is we're sort of talking to a lot of our clients at the moment about, what their offer should look, well, not now, but we were about what their offer should look like. And I think it's difficult because as the market has become more competitive and you've got brands like your clients that are taking very, very considered strategic approaches to the way that they're engaging in this period, they're across their numbers. They're discounting in accordance with those numbers. And then they're also strategizing around it so they get the most out of the period, like shutting down your website or whatever it may be. If you're not getting that sort of guidance, then you start to look out into the market and you start basically considering your offer on the back of what other people are doing. And I would say that is probably the biggest and most risky thing in my experience in terms of where I've seen it go wrong is basing your offer, your consideration around numbers based off other people's numbers. They're not the same.
Well, you don't know the numbers. That's the point, right?
Well, yeah.
You could be replicating a failing business model.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like, I've spoken to, this is actually not this year, but a while ago, I spoke to a client and, they were wanting to run at like 40%, 50% off, which is fine if you've got the numbers to do that, but they didn't. And that's the thing is like, if you don't control your you don't have a control over your numbers, you don't have a control over your discounting behavior, whatever it may be during this period, then you actually come out of it worse off. And that's
because all you're going to do is attract people who don't want to buy your full price stuff.
Exactly. And you're doing it at a rate where you're not able to deliver or get a high enough return on ad spend to actually.
It's like a loss leader, but it's a loss leader for the worst because those customers aren't going to hang around.
Exactly. So I think like it's one example of it, but I think that is the thing is like, I would say the best client relationships that we have are brands which do know their numbers. They do know what, not necessarily an optimal return on ad spend would look like for them, but they at least have a threshold there that they know they can work at a profitable rate for. And we can then, obviously regulate spend. We can help them with offers. We can sort of move their strategy around in a way that's going to align with what those business goals are. I would say probably the worst relationships, and there's not many of them, but I would say like where we have had relationships that haven't gone well, it is normally because we have either worked on the back of numbers which aren't correct, or alternatively, we've given advice on the basis that, we think this is where the position they're in, when in reality, it isn't actually the best position for them. And I think that's where the delineation between sort of the growth agency and sort of e-commerce consultancy needs to come in, is that we can definitely bring you offers. We can bring you the latest, strategies in a lot of ways to be able to, to be able to get you to cut through. But what that actually looks like numerically, we don't know that without you opening the books and actually showing us what your margins look like, what your business looks like, and all those things. And I mean, I understand why most businesses wouldn't want an agency sort of sifting around in those, through those numbers. So, but
sifting around through those numbers. But I think there's definitely like I know with my agency, they put forward what they expected their, like when you work with a specialist agency and you guys work with retail and e-com brands, the people I work with businesses like mine that do consulting. So by their own, default, they can actually say across our customers, this is what we're seeing works, but also at this rate. So let's just say customer acquisition cost is somewhere between $40 and $60 at the moment. And then you can go back and say, does $40 to $60 work for me? But even just having that range and having the agency tell you what they feel their KPIs are, and then you going back and saying, well, does this work for me? Or does this fit in with my numbers? Means immediately you can see whether it's on the same page. And you might say, you know what, $40 doesn't work for me. Like I need it to be down at 20. And then it's realization. It's like, okay, well, can we actually do this? Are we the right people for you? Maybe this is what you would have to do. Or, do you want to build your email list rather than doing a direct to conversion? Like there's other things, but not knowing any numbers, in my opinion, is just a recipe for success because you can't make any financial decision. Like, I've been in that situation before where the agency's just like, give us more money. And I'm like, no, because the numbers don't work. If I give you more money at the current rate, I'm just wasting money.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it has to be like you said, I think it has to be a two-way discussion where you sit down and you say like, we can say, like you said, this is realistic. We work a lot, for instance, in beauty, skincare, lifestyle, wellness. We work a lot in fragrance, that sort of space, fashion as well. We have a pretty strong understanding of we have a pretty good understanding of what these businesses are working on generally from a margin perspective. And I guess also an understanding of what's working. But having a two-way discussion, I think, is really, really important. And I think it goes to the point as well, like having the ability as well as an agency to be able to sit there and say, okay, well, how are our email automations looking? What is it actually looking like there? Because that is very, very important to the efficiency of your paid media. Don't even get me started. I know, I get fired up about it as well. I'm so bullish on email, but that's the thing is like,
me too.
I'm bullish on it because it saves you so much money. And when I look at it, I'm like, you don't have any email automations there. You can either do them yourself. Like, you've got templates there. You don't need even anyone to go in and set them up.
I mean, if you're in Klaviyo, click the button that says, start this.
Yeah, I know. And that is the thing though, is like, I think going to your point around spending more money, I think a lot of agencies, because they are just media buying still, and we don't live in a media buyer's world anymore. I think that's a really important thing to know. We live in a very, very complicated digital world now, far more visual digital world, and media buying definitely has a place in that world, but it isn't the be all and end all. And I think what you end up seeing is, because of that, a lot of brands or a lot of agencies will go to brands and they'll say, spend more, because that's the lever they have to pull. Exactly. And I think that's the problem. That's the problem. It's like it's a transactional relationship in the end. And if that's the only lever you have to pull, then you're always going to lean on that lever. You're never going to think horizontally. And I know, the psychology behind it. If I send them to this agency, I might lose the client. If I send them over here, I might not be able to do this. Like, this is, I think, where the mindset goes. And then you just get this situation where it's just digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and they're spending more, but they're not getting the return. But they're not actually addressing the issues in why they're not getting that return. And I think that's where having more scope to capability, being able to pull a creative lever, being able to pull an email lever, being able to think platform diversification, and having the capabilities to look at that. I think that, when you're working with an agency that can do that, it just means things aren't as linear. It is a bit more horizontally thinking.
Yeah, love it. Okay, you're talking about things differently. We don't work in the linear world anymore. We are very much about creative, which brings us all the way back to the beginning where I said, I saw your sexy ads, which were not sexual, just really good. So let's talk now about TikTok, because you and I were chatting the other day at CEO Club, and you were trying to sell me, you did a very good job, on the importance of TikTok. And I've been thinking about it. I'm not quite there yet, because I do work with an agency who has a very distinctive strategy that we've got in play, but I've been thinking about it for 2024. So can you tell me, in terms of retail and e-commerce stores and brands, why would they diversify to TikTok?
Yeah, for sure. I might talk on hours on this. So if I am going too long, then just cut me off, because I think, so to give you a bit of an idea around why we do so much work on TikTok to begin with, because I think it's important to sort of being able to set the scene. So because we have a creative team and a performance team built out in-house, basically the way that we're structured, within those teams, we have a range of different people. We can obviously see, especially from an advertising perspective, your entire advertising process end to end through. So creative production, creative briefing, design and editing, all the way through to distributing those ads and actually running the ad strategy for you. A key focus for us, though, because of the platforms we generally work on, our primary focus is Meta, TikTok, and we do work on Google as well. It's very complementary. We focus very much on what we like to call native content formats. So formats which feel native to the platform that you're actually advertising on. For a long time, that could be considered as something like user-generated content, which does still work out in the market at the moment. But thinking more now about like a sort of shifting creative expectations around things like edutainment. So we say edutainment, it's like educational and entertainment driven content. So content which adds value to your customers. They're watching it because it's of value to them, not because it's a sponsored post or it's being put in front of them.
Is that kind of along the, I always pull out the scarf because I can't tie a scarf. Is that like, 3 ways to tie a scarf for winter? Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about edutainment?
Yeah, for sure. And that is an example of it. It's like, it's being able to give the customer value and being able to give the customer, I know I said native, I keep on using this word native, but a native experience on the platform. I always say you don't want to offend the customer's eyes on the platform. And what that means is you don't want to be putting something on the platform which is inconsistent with what they're consuming on a day-to-day basis. It's going to cause aversion. They're not going to watch it. It's not in line with what their expectations are. So going to the point on TikTok, like we're working because of that end-to-end capacity, and we have for a while now quite extensively on TikTok, looking both at creative production and even full scope management on the platform organically and actually paid as well. But the reason why TikTok is becoming so powerful is not only because obviously it's a growing platform. There are a lot of people on there. It started as a Gen Z platform, obviously, but has actually aged and matured. And, the fastest growing age group now is between 35 plus. So you're 35 to 55. Is that yeah, the fastest growing age group on the platform. So it's no longer like the Gen Z dance platform that everyone had hesitations about. It is a platform which has aged, matured, and evolved. But the reason why it is causing, I guess, such so much cut through and I guess such a ripple in the overall advertising space is because of that native experience. So it is a native platform. The content is raw. The content is real. It speaks to the customer from a value prospect. It doesn't speak to the customer because necessarily you have nice packaging or you've paid $30,000 for a video shoot. It's highly accessible, and it's what we call a counter-cyclical platform. So it's got that video consumption function, much like Instagram or Facebook, where you can scroll for days, death scroll, and you can view videos and everything like that. But it also has a search engine. And that search engine is becoming more and more readily used, but it's actually now the choice of search engine for people aged between 18 and 30. So more people between 18 and 30 are using that search engine than Google to actually look at new things, find new products, solve ailments or issues. And what you get for that reason is not a one size fits all, I should say, an all-in-one platform where you have a customer and you're able to not only engage a community, but you're also able to get that customer actually searching for your product on not necessarily your product, but the searching for something on the platform. We are seeing really from an advertising perspective, it was a bit slow going to begin with TikTok, to be completely honest, younger platform. So algorithm just not as developed, but it's aging now. It's been, brands have been advertising on it now for probably around, a lot of them for a good 2 years now. And a lot of new entrants obviously coming into the market, but it is cheap.
I was about to say, is it still cheap, relatively speaking?
Like relative to Facebook, we still see, and we've run quite a few case studies for brands where we're running ads on Facebook and then running ads on TikTok. And you're still seeing for a lot of brands, around 50% the CPM. So 50% the cost to get in front of 1,000 people on TikTok as opposed to Facebook. So it's cheap. But the thing about it is that the return on ad spend that we're now seeing on TikTok is comparable, if not better, than what we're seeing on Facebook and Instagram in a lot of ways.
So it's cheaper but more profitable.
Cheaper but more profitable. And the reason being is because it's not as busy. So there are still brands, obviously, that are sitting back and watching the platform for understandable reasons. But at the same time, it is that native experience, which is, I think, driving so much consumer behavior on the platform. It's speaking to the customers in the way they want to be spoken to. Like we have a saying, it's make TikToks, not ads. The organic and the paid process the organic and paid process are closer together than they ever have been on any platform. So what you run from an advertising perspective is very similar normally to what you run from an organic media perspective on the platform. So what you're posting on the platform. And for that reason, like the ability for a brand to be able to engage a community, but then actually drive really good returns on the platform is there. And I would say it's in a position at the moment, TikTok is what we're seeing on our end, where, that Instagram was probably in 2016, like 2015, 2016. Yeah.
So for a lot of people are probably thinking, especially people who are 35 plus, that this is just another channel, yet another channel I need to advertise on. Would you be so kind? And I didn't ask you this before we jumped on, so hopefully he says yes, guys. Would you be so kind as to walk me through what using TikTok would be like if my ultimate goal was to make sales off of it? So I'm a retailer. Let's just say I'm reselling other people. I own a fashion store selling other people's stuff. What could I do, like end to end? What could I do to use TikTok to get sales?
Yeah. So the first point of call is always starting with organic. And the reason being is because I mentioned before about that sort of intersection between paid and organic on the platform, very, very close together. Very, very difficult to run paid media on the platform without having an organic presence to begin with. So starting organically on the platform is always a recommendation. And the reason being as well is because it is an algorithmic platform. So it relies very, very heavily on the algorithm. It's less interest-based targeting and more sort of machine learning, like to say, ways in which you get in front of your customers. It requires data touch points to learn about your customer as well. So the organic processes, it's going to allow the algorithm to actually learn about your customer in a quite an effective way. But when we're talking about paid media, not to get too technical, but we actually run like what we call a cascading paid media approach. So it's very different to Facebook and Instagram, where you've got your organic social media operating over here. So you've got your Instagram page, then you've got your ads operating over here in the ad account. When we're talking about TikTok, those two things, as I mentioned, are close together. And what we're doing in the early days is in a lot of ways actually just running engagement on the advertising side of things, not necessarily conversions. I know that may seem a bit counterintuitive, but the reason why we do that is because you actually have to establish a database before, or a data touch point base before you start going after conversions and sales. What we found in the past.
I was going to say, this is super helpful because some people might be thinking, oh, Thomas sounds cool. I'm going to go, Tom sounds cool. That's what his mum calls him, Thomas. He sounds cool. I'm going to go do the TikTok and start running ads. But what you're actually saying is, well, hold up. To make this an effective platform, what you really need to be doing is getting the system, getting the algorithm to know who the people are first. It's not I can go out and blast to cold traffic like I can on Facebook and Instagram and Google. This is actually a platform where you kind of got to let the system do its thing first. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries. And that's the thing, is you do need that, because otherwise it's going to become very expensive. And that's the thing we want to avoid, obviously, is not spending unnecessarily on paid media where it's not going to convert for you, spending where you need to spend, building that base, and then transitioning to that.
So back to your cascading ad strategy, which I quite rudely interrupted.
Yeah. So what we call it cascading because it basically goes from the broadest objectives on the platform through to the most targeted. And by the broadest, what I mean is we start with video views. We then move to add to carts. And we do this in quite a short period of time. So we're looking at about two to 4 week period here. We're not running this for months. But we move to add to carts. We move to followers. And then what we do is we slowly move through, we move to followers, then add to carts. And then what we do is we slowly move through to conversions from there after we've established a presence on the platform, and then after we've established those data touch points. And what we find is that where we do go through that process, it puts the ad account in a position where when you do shift to conversions, it sort of goes pop. So it is able to find your customers far more efficiently. You don't have that sort of like long drawn out testing period that you generally see on Facebook and Instagram where you're in learning limited and then you've got to like throw budget here and throw budget there. And then after 3 months, you feel like you haven't really got out of the testing process at all. It's very sort of structured, which I actually really like because the way we can communicate it to clients is quite linear. It's like, this is what we actually need to do. We've tested this on a lot of accounts. It's a very specific way in which we go about doing it. And then what we do from there is we run this for you. You know the timelines, when we're going to switch over. There aren't sort of those like free radicals flying around like Facebook and Instagram where it's like, we may need a test here for like a couple of months and then we'll find what's going on here and we can extract that and move this into the new campaign, because that's sort of how the actual platform works. So it's nice having that structure in a lot of ways. And from an agency perspective, being able to communicate that and be transparent with the client about that in a lot of ways. But I think also for the client, because they're like, okay, well, this is the structure and this is how the structure works.
It sounds like it's reasonably quick too. So if that's the case, if you're just starting out on TikTok, you said that edutainment videos are a great place to start. So like say somebody says, I'm going to give this a go. I'm saying just go and talk to Thomas and his team because this is what they're good at. But if someone wants to give it a go first, how many videos are they looking to put out like per day, per week? Because you just kind of gave me like within 3 or 4 weeks. So my marketer head simply goes to, that must be a crap ton of content that you guys are sticking out there in that short period of time to try and get the machine to learn what are people interested in, what should we post more of?
Yeah, so it's actually still a point of controversy how much content you should be posting on TikTok. There's definitely not a right answer. I actually would go as far to say in our experience that the quality of the content that you're producing is still more important on TikTok than the volume. Like you're better still producing 1 or 2 videos a week and those videos being absolutely killer videos than you are producing 30 videos a week and them just not being up to scratch. And when I say about quality, I'm not talking about visual quality, so refinement quality. I'm talking about value quality. Like what are we actually conveying to the customer? What sort of value are we passing off to them? When we think about content on the platform, like the easiest way to think about the creative strategy is to split it up into what we call reactive and proactive, or reactive and brand-centric content. On one hand, you've got proactive content, and proactive content is the content that you are turning out at the beginning of the month. It's generally more in line with the normal advertising format that you are putting out on possibly Instagram now, video format, and it's more curated, it's more brand-centric and more direct response in a lot of ways as well. Reactive content, on the other hand, is content which is based on trends and reactivity throughout the course of the month. And that's where TikTok becomes a difficult platform, because it's not only about producing enough content, it's also being able to identify a trend that aligns with your brand, and then being able to actually ride on the back of that trend to get viral, basically to reach virality. So you really need a combination of both of those content formats to make it work. We have clients who are producing 12 pieces of creative a month, and they're killing it. They're doing really, really well. We have other clients who are producing 30 plus pieces of creative per month, and they're doing very, very well as well. I would say probably the primary consideration for the amount of content, though, that you need to produce is your ad spend. Because the one thing I would say about TikTok, whether you see it as a plus or a minus, is that creative does burn out very quickly on the platform.
Which makes sense, because it is the kind of, like, I've run the same ad for 7 months on Facebook, and people say, people go, I'm so sick of seeing this. You should switch it off. And I'm like, it's making me money. I would be stupid to switch it off.
Exactly.
But TikTok is not like that. Like, even I know that, which is, it is about being fresh. So it sounds like before you jump in and just start posting stuff, it is really just sit down and have a bit of a strategy. So I have a quick question about the edutainment. You so know that I'm just like asking you these questions for my own personal consumption.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So in the edutainment videos, are you doing a call to action to buy a thing? Or, like, say we're doing the scarves, here's 3 ways to tie a scarf. Are we then saying shop scarves now, link? Can you put a link into TikTok? This is how. Okay.
You can. So from an ad perspective, like, the best way to run it is like a Facebook ad, in the sense that you have a CTA which is built into the actual platform, which takes you to the landing page. But generally speaking, being less direct response is better. And what I mean by that though is, actually, it's probably not the right way to put it. Being less structured in your ad format is better, because what we're looking for with edutainment, and I'm throwing around a lot of like sort of phrases here, but like this idea of like situationally styling your content, that's really what edutainment is what's really important. And what I mean by that is not selling the product, but actually selling the use case of the product, selling the context in which the product's going to be used, selling the lifestyle that the product is going to be used in, so that you've got an alignment there between your customer and that lifestyle. So, like, I think to your point, like when we're talking about the scarf situation, for instance, that would be definitely an edutainment format. But what we'd be looking to do is we'd be looking to take that creative format and think about ways in which we can TikTokize it. So, like, how can we make it feel even more native to the platform? It's like, do we use a green screen? Do we use a green screen? Do we use these sort of like different methods to be able to do we use stitches? Do we use like different TikTok methods to actually get the customer there? The stitches, I'll give you a stitches where you've got like a video and you've got someone talking. They take that video and then they basically commentate on the other video. So it's like
yeah, got it. Oh my God, I feel so old right now for someone who has been in marketing for so long. I really.
Yeah. I'm not a Gen Zer, I'm a millennial. So I even sometimes feel old. Like, we have a team of Gen Zers who are like on top of this in terms of the picking up trends. Yeah, they live it, because they're just digital natives who started in a lot of ways, using social media in their late teens, even on the platform. So it's like, it's that eye, which I think is what's really difficult. And that's why I sympathize with brands. I mean, most brand owners aren't, 25 years old. Most brand owners are older than that. And, if it's not a platform you use day to day, how do you follow in the trends? How do you keep up with it? And I think that's where a lot of the difficulty does come in for brands.
Yeah. And this is why just having someone, like, if you give it a go, my whole thought process here would be, give it a go yourself. And if you see some kind of positive response, then you bring in the experts to do it for you. If you may not be perfect, you may not get the right edutainment, but if you can go, you know what? I posted some TikToks. I posted some TikToks. I was going to say reels, videos. I got a little bit confused there. I posted some TikToks. I got some good engagement. Maybe this thing might work for me. And then I am all for give it a go yourself, small budget, short period of time. If you see some kind of result, get the experts in. Because realistically, as the business owner, founder, CEO, you got other things that you should be spending your time on than sitting there
Yep.
trying to learn a whole new platform. Because like you said, your kids, I'm going to call them kids, your kids who are doing this have been doing it for years and know that, live and breathe that platform. And there is no way that even if I sat there every single day, I would have the brain space to even understand how the Gen Zers are thinking, right? So it's, I feel like this is one of those things where you go, you know what, I'm going to take the opportunity, I'm going to give it a go. And if I see that it works, I'm going to hand it over to somebody else. And realistically, that's kind of my whole premise, really, in terms of business.
I agree, because it's complicated. But, the other thing as well is that you were talking about paid media before and like cascading structures and stuff like that. You can get value out of the platform without spending a cent. And like that search engine functionality I was talking about, that is, in my opinion, the sleeper in all this. I think that is going to be where brands who are optimizing for SEO on the platform, they are going to see huge returns and really, really sustained returns long term, because the way that people are engaging in that intent-based journey on the internet to, whether it is to find brands, whether it is to find answers, that's evolving as well. Like people know that Google has been SEO'd to an inch of its life. People know that you can pay to get into publications, you can pay to get into whatever it may be. And for that reason, you're ranking yourself and you're putting yourself in a position through brute force, some brands, not all brands, but brute force to get yourself there. And it goes to that point again that people are yearning for authentic experiences. And if they can go onto TikTok and they can see that there is a real person that looks like them, that speaks like them, that shot a video actually accounting for what their experience was like with the product, what the delivery was like, why they bought the product, the ailment they've been experiencing and how they resolved it. It just is that one step deeper again in that visual experience and what people are going to, or how people are going to feel about a brand when there are advocates for that brand who are giving authentic recounts of how the product's working, not necessarily a written Google review or, even a written article, which very easily,
can just be made
fixed.
up.
You just don't know.
And I think
exactly.
I'm just going to say that like the UGC, the user generated content, the influencer, like it's always going to be there and it's always going to work. But even now, I am so highly skeptical of seeing these ads which show me, the foundation or the shapewear. Clearly, you can tell it what I get targeted by.
Yeah.
I'll buy the things, but generally, the first thing I do is go and review. Like I search product and then review, and then I see all these people who go, "Oh, I got sucked in to buy the thing and it was crap." So I think we're a little bit smarter these days when it comes to stuff that looks like it's clearly been made to be an ad, if that makes sense.
That's right. And that like you're exactly right, because that marker is moving constantly. It started as like the out of home billboard ad, which was, it obviously curated to an inch of its life and it's put out there for everyone to see. And then we moved to digital. And then what we had with digital was obviously people trying to replicate that out of home experience online. So putting really flashy, high production imagery and everything like that. But over time, because of the disconnect you have on the internet, especially for your retailers, when you are in store, you can speak to the person. You can speak to a shop attendant. You can get a feel for what the brand is like. And normally that shop attendant will be somewhat of a reflection of the brand. You can feel the product. There are so many touch points there that are physical and very important to the buyer journey. And you don't get that online. And I think what's happened over time is people have understood, as you mentioned, that not everything that you see on the internet is real. There is a lot of
shock horror.
Crazy, right? Crazy, but there's a lot of fakeness. And I think that's the thing is like, that's why the more authentic and the more stripped down you can be, obviously you need to still be on brand. And I think there's a difference between being on brand and authentic and high production. You don't need to necessarily be high production, but I think it's balancing those two elements, which are really important, because it overcomes the point that you just mentioned there, where we are smarter. We are all digital natives to varying degrees now. And we can see through the crap, to put it really simply. You need something which is at least feels real. Even if it's not real, it at least needs to feel real. And if you can get the real experience, then that's even better. But it at least needs to feel real and sort of meet expectations in that way.
Yeah. This is one of those places where I think bricks and mortar stores never leverage it often enough. Is they put pictures of product up, but they never do. I'm just going back to Reels because we hang out on Instagram. do a reel in the store, people, because automatically I can see you've got a store with people. I'll buy from you because you're real. Like, if something goes wrong, I could actually call you, or I could hunt you down and come into your store. So, but
right.
yeah.
And that's it's a good point, because the TikTok landscape, the Instagram landscape as well. Because I mean, Instagram has tried to keep up with TikTok. That's really where you've seen the evolution of Reels, pushing that more. It's why you don't see as many, of your friends' posts on the platform anymore, and you're seeing more videos that you may not even like, to be honest. But they're just pushing videos. But it's such a good point, because much to a founder's or a brand's dismay, always say this, is that the modern landscape, the modern media landscape lends to founder-centric content, and it lends to brand-centric content. So not just user-generated content. It can't just be users anymore. Some of the best creators we've seen on the TikTok platform and on the Instagram platform have been founders in their natural setting, speaking through the product, speaking through as the mind child of the product, speaking through the design, why they created it, why they, what they had in mind when they created it, why the customer was in mind. Like all these things, again, it just gives that level of depth, which is going to speak to the customer, and it's going to authenticate the buying experience. And I think, to your point, we call it brand-centric, brand-generated content, I should say, but being able to shoot in that retail setting, getting your team involved, getting all those things, bringing life, lifting the veil on what's actually going on in the business, going to be very, very fruitful as well.
All right. Tom, you and I could clearly talk about this for hours, but I am going to wrap it up there, because that was the perfect stopping point. We can carry on this conversation over a glass of wine at CEO Club another day. Yep. If people think that you're super cool, just like I do, and they're reaching out and they're going, I want to talk to Buttr, and it's Buttr with no E, how can they find you? And can I just point out, because I know that a lot of you listening are in the UK or in the US, Tom charges in AUD. So realistically, his agency is ridiculously cheap with the current exchange rate.
Yeah, it's true. So the US brands love us for that, because I like to say they get good experience for often a fraction of the price of what you pay in the US, because some of those fees are crazy. So I mean, if obviously we got our websites, we are Buttr without an E. We're masters at dropping a letter, but we are Buttr, BUTTR.com. And we also obviously have our Instagram. We are Buttr. We're on TikTok, obviously, as I've spoken about. You can obviously reach out to Sal even, and I'm sure Sal will be able to pass on the details.
Right. I would say check out your Instagram. We are Buttr with no E in Buttr, an E in the we, to see those sexy pieces of content that I'm talking about, because they really are. They're just, I guess, slick, but in a way that for me was kind of like, wow, this is the kind of people I would like to hang out with. It's just slick enough to look like it was good quality, but not so bad that it was like, oh, that's clearly overproduced. So kudos to you and your creative team, because you've done an amazing job. Big love from me, because I love that where you're end to end, you're just as much in the numbers and the strategy and getting your customers results as much as we are. Check out We Are Buttr with no E in Buttr on Instagram, TikTok. Are you on Facebook? Are you old school?
We are, but we don't spend much time on it, to be honest. We advertise on Facebook. We cross post and stuff like that. So you will be able to find us on there though.
Okay, no problems. Any parting last words before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I was going to say, I mean, big ups to you as well, because I think that you fill the gap and the void for us as well. And I think that's the thing is obviously, I think there's always mutual beneficial relationships, but I think in the sense of what you do give clarity to brands, and that clarity helps us. So the more clarity that can be given, the better we can do. And I think that's really the thing is we obviously always want to work towards our business goals. And I guess you are able to actually align that in a way that makes sense for them as a business. But apart from that, I really appreciate you having me on. Hopefully everyone got a bit of value. But I'm always open to talk shop as well, just sort of, offline as well with people if they're interested in TikTok just in general and need tips. So I always find time to do that.
Cool. Thank you, Tom. This has been awesome. And we will have to get you on again to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dal.
So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at @TheSelenaKnight and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.